yeah. She's a very confident performer now.
Yeah,
no
it's
doubt
amazing.
about it.
I mean, of course she has grown up because she was, 16 when she started.
Kate Robertson is a regular music critic here on Afternoons. She's joining the conversation now. Hi, Kate.
Hello.
Come on, what did you make of the song?
I took a while to warm up to it, and I was watching that live stream on YouTube, and it kind of threw me. I didn't know what to think, but I knew it would be a song that just needed a few listens. And look, I've probably listened to it 6 or 7 times today. I think it's awesome. I think there's a lot of sensationalizing happening around it at the moment. I saw a few articles saying it's going to be bigger than Royals and, things along those lines, MTV, Billboard, sites like that. And I think that's a pretty big call to make. And I still think Green Light is such an anthem and was such an amazing song to release, to come back with. But it was really amazing to just see her first live performance in 2 years, and she blew it out of the park at Coachella, like the second headline of the night.
Yep. I mean, it's a big thing to be doing. You start off at 16 and you turn 20 in the public limelight. She's managing a transition from teenagehood to sort of young adulthood. I think she's doing it quite well. What do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, maybe, I definitely had concerns that going from Pure Heroine, it was such a coming-of-age album in a teen way, and I was really intrigued to see where that went. And Pure Heroine was such a concept album, which doesn't happen a lot in mainstream pop music. There's often quite disjointed tracks, and there's not a massive narrative that runs throughout. But what I like is that Melodrama, the album that's coming out in June. From the 3 songs that she's released, it sounds very much like it's going to have that same, it's going to have a concept to it. And she spoke about that at the start, that it's, being a 20-something and just figuring life out. And it's super exciting because and as you said before, she's grown up a lot. And her songwriting has been incredible since she was 16, but, it's just stepped up another level, and every lyric is just cutting and so intelligent. So I'm really excited to see what the rest of the album comes out with.
Panellists, your thoughts, please. Do you think that Lorde, who's obviously very popular overseas, is in danger of a New Zealand tall poppy backlash at all?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, I think that this young woman's a genius, and, as
Big word?
Well, you can use genius in a number of different iterations, but the fact is that her writing is extraordinary, and her songs have what I call a long life, that you listen to them and you learn there's something new in them a year, 2 years after you first heard them. And I think this song, it's too early to judge it, but she writes really interesting propositions, and she asks those that listen to her music to think rather than just experience it. That's her genius.
Yeah. Nikki?
I couldn't say it better, I don't think.
It's an easy way out, but it's a
is.
good ending because I can hear the music winding us up.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time on the panel this afternoon. Andrew Shaw, Nikki Bazant. It's been Finlay McDonald with you, standing in for Jim Mora. Jim will be back, I presume, soon. I'm not exactly sure when, but I'm sure he's had a nice break. Thank you very much. The news and Checkpoint follows at 5 o'clock.
Kia ora, everyone. Quite an extraordinary afternoon. 55,000 aged care and support workers get a $2 billion pay rise. It's over 5 years. The woman who battled for 5 years to make it happen is Christine Bartlett. She's going to join us live. Jonathan Coleman explains what's been announced and why. And the Aged Care Association, who appealed it to the Supreme Court, welcome it. Also tonight we go to a rest home to ask Christine's colleagues what they think of this announcement. And the government announces a $700,000 support package for Edgecombe businesses. Who gets it and why? Doc puts up a fence to stop thieves from looting 150-year-old whale bones on the Kokoda Peninsula. And Sir Peter Snell's golden gifts to Te Papa. All of that and more coming up after the pips and the news.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, good afternoon. Ko Katrina Batinaho.
The government has agreed to a $2 billion pay equity settlement for care and support workers. In 2013, caregiver Christine Bartlett successfully argued in the Employment Court that her low hourly pay rate was a result of gender discrimination under the Equal Pay Act. From July the 1st, the predominantly female workforce will receive a pay rise of between about 15 and 49%, depending on their qualifications and experience. The Prime Minister, Bill English, says the settlement will affect about 55,000 workers.
The agreement is the result of a complex and detailed negotiation over the past 20 months, and it will deliver a significant pay boost for some of the country's most dedicated and hard-working but lowest paid workers.
The Prime Minister, Bill English, Christine Bartlett says the settlement will give workers dignity and pride, knowing they're being paid what they're worth. The Environment Court has found that converting land to dairy in the McKenzie Basin is unsustainable and should not be happening. It follows a 10-year court battle over a change to planning rules proposing restrictions on development. The Chief Executive of the Environmental Defence Society, Gary Taylor, says the decision is scathing of the position adopted by federated farmers in opposing the protection of the basin.
The court observed that federated farmers have stubbornly ignored the basin's unique and threatened ecology and the growing evidence that pastoral intensification is eradicating those values.
Gary Taylor says it's significant the decision recommends a moratorium on tenure review in the basin, the process by which farmers leasing land from the Crown are able to purchase it outright. It says this has resulted in land being converted to dairy farming. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi says today diplomatic means must be used to resolve tensions on the Korean peninsula, where North Korea has vowed to continue with its nuclear and missile programs in defiance of United Nations sanctions. Mr. Wang, speaking at a news conference in Beijing, urged all sides to find a peaceful solution. United States Vice President Mike Pence is expected today to reassure Japan of American commitment to reining in North Korea's nuclear and missile ambitions. The Vice President took off for Tokyo from a US airbase south of Seoul, where he assured leaders of the ironclad alliance with the United States. He also warned the North that what he called the era of strategic patience is over. A vegetable supplier says it will take months before flood-damaged crops are back to normal. Vegetable prices have surged because heavy rain and flooding during March and April caused root rot disease in crops, and the vegetables had to be destroyed. Foodstuffs and Progressive Enterprises say their supermarkets throughout the country have been affected by the price increases. The live-in supplier Woodhaven Gardens has over 1,000 acres of crops, excuse me, and its production manager Adam Jory says the damage is extensive.
Some paddocks we've lost 100% of the crop that we've sown recently. The young crops they haven't been able to cope with it at all. Other paddocks, if they dry out and they continue to dry out, we might be able to salvage some crop.
Adam Jory says they'll take a financial hit as they won't be sending supermarkets as many vegetables as they did this time last year. The manhunt has widened for a murder suspect who police said posted a video of himself on Facebook shooting an elderly man in Cleveland, Ohio. The police say they've received dozens of tips for possible sightings of the suspect, Steve Stevens, and tried to persuade him to surrender when they spoke with him via his cell phone. But Stevens remains at large as the search for him expanded nationwide. The video marked the latest video clip of a violent crime to turn up on Facebook, raising questions about how the world's biggest social media network moderates content. The company on Monday said it would begin reviewing how it monitors violent footage and other objectionable material in response to the killing. It's 5:04. To sport, and the Hurricanes centre Geordie Barrett has been ruled out of the under-20 squad for the Oceania tournament due to Super Rugby commitments. Barrett was named in the side last month but has been ruled out to focus on the Hurricanes. Blues first 5'8", Stephen Perofeta has also been ruled out due to an ankle injury. Secondary school representatives Thomas Umanga Jensen and Kieran Martoy will join the squad for the Gold Coast tournament, which starts next week. Athletics legend Sir Peter Snell says he only realised Te Papa was interested in his collection after he learnt they bid over $120,000 for a singlet he supposedly wore at the 1964 Tokyo Olympics. He donated his collection, including his gold medal for the 800 metres in the 1960 Rome Olympics and one of the two he won at the 1964 Tokyo Games, to the museum today.
I'm actually honoured that they were interested, and I wouldn't have known if they hadn't bid all that money for my singlet. And so once I knew about that, then I made the offer. But I can't think of anything better than Te Papa.
Sir Peter Snell. The singlet was subsequently withdrawn from sale by the auction house after the museum raised doubts about its authenticity. It seems more and more likely that Kieran Foran's alliance with the Warriors will end when his contract runs out this year. Following the Warriors' loss to the Raiders in Canberra at the weekend, Foran went to Newcastle to discuss the prospect of joining the Knights. But coach Nathan Brown says he's none the wiser about Foran's intentions after the meeting. That's the news.
Bigger pay packets on the way.
If we're going to be serious about tackling issues like child poverty and low-wage workers not even be able to afford a home, we have to look at the amount we pay them.
But others still struggle.
We know that New Zealand households, especially on lower incomes, are still struggling, and they are trying to make ends meet, and especially given the state of our housing market.
The cost of living rises.
We're in the grip of a housing crisis, and nothing the current government has done has actually addressed that.
Working for a living. Guy Aspinall and Susie Ferguson, Morning Reports, weekdays from 6.
Then on 9 to noon, obstetricians say mothers and babies will be put at risk if the midwifery crisis is not sorted out. And after 10 o'clock, Lawrence Fernley on sniffing out the neighbourhood, scent mapping and searching for the best writing on New Zealand mountaineering. Join Catherine Ryan after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland and Auckland fine, apart from a few showers in Northland spreading to Auckland tomorrow. Waikato to Manawatu, including Coromandel Bay of Plenty and the Central High Country. Mostly fine, however, a few showers about the Central High Country today and from Waitomo southwards tomorrow. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, a few showers clearing south of Wairoa tonight and elsewhere tomorrow. Horowhenua to Wellington, mainly fine, but a few showers around midday tomorrow. Marlborough and Nelson, mostly fine, however a few showers chiefly about the ranges. Bulla and Westland, a few showers for Bulla, spreading to Westland tomorrow. Canterbury, fine and cloudy periods today, cloud increasing later tomorrow with a few showers. Otago, Southland and Fiordland, fine today, mostly cloudy tomorrow with a period of morning rain followed by isolated showers. The Chatham Islands, cloudy periods with a few showers. It's 5:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Coming up on the programme, the water quality in the Mackenzie country. A special report from Kate Gudsell, but we begin tonight, of course, with the pay equity settlement. It began with a woman named Christine Bartlett and the Service and Food Workers Union. It was called the Equal Pay Case, and at one stage the appeal against it reached the Supreme Court, which sent it packing. It was dismissed as not sustainable, as likely to lead to rest home closures and therefore to significant job losses. But today, after 5 years, the government announced, and I quote, some of the health sector's lowest paid workers will share in a $2 billion pay equity settlement over 5 years. In total, 55,000 workers are covered, the overwhelming majority of them women. The figures are varied depending on qualifications and experience, but, and again I quote, for the 20,000 workers currently on the minimum wage of $15.75 per hour, it means on July 1st they will move to at least $19 per hour. This was announced by Health Minister Jonathan Coleman with Bill English about an hour ago. He spoke to us immediately afterwards.
Oh, look, it's going to be huge. I mean, 20,000 of these women are on the minimum wage, and they are going to get an instant pay rise, taking them up to $19 an hour. So they are going to be taking home in the hand $5,511 per year. So, you know, that is massive because, I mean, these people do very, very difficult work. It's been unrecognised for a long time. You know, I've worked with a lot of them as a doctor in my time, you know, in clinical practice. It is really tough work. and now they're getting the reward that they deserve, frankly. So, look, a really historic day. I mean, there's never been a pay rise like this in New Zealand.
For 55,000 workers, no, not to this extent. But look, and credit where credit's due. And in fact, in your media release, which I'm holding and I've just received, you thank ETU, the Public Service Association, the New Zealand Nurses Organisation and the CTU. I mean, you are a national cabinet minister thanking unions, and I hear from everyone involved it's been a constructive process. But there does seem to have been a kind of road to Damascus experience, because this was appealed in the first instance all the way to the Supreme Court. Did the horse get led to the water by the courts and think, shivers, I'm here, I might as well drink?
Well, I mean, it was Terra Nova, appealing this because, it had massive implications for them. But, I mean, the reality in any negotiation is two sides come to the table with a set of things they want to get out of it, and in the end, it's a bit of give and take, and that's where we've got to with this agreed position. Now, obviously, the unions would have wanted more. They would have wanted $2 billion of back pay, but we were able to deliver a settlement which actually the country can afford, that also recognises, the hard work that these people do. So it's been a long process, 20 months, but the spirit in which it's been conducted has been excellent. It's been very constructive. And in the end, I think everyone, regardless of their political persuasion, will be really happy to see these very deserving women being paid more, because they deserve it.
So, one of the objections to this was that some rest homes, some obviously doing very nicely, but some aren't. And they are not for profit, they're run by church groups or social agencies or whatever, that they simply can't afford it. What is the government's response to that?
Oh, no, well, the government is putting in $2 billion plus to pay for these wages. So, were the arguments against the Christine Bartlett case always disingenuous? Because the government was always, at some level, going to have to stump up, right? Well, I mean, it was a negotiation, right? So, there was always going to be a massive bill attached to it. And don't forget, I mean, the only reason we can pay this now is because of the excellent state we've got the books into over the last 8.5 years. So it's been the overall 50
Okay, so this is Bill English's tax cut redistributed to 55,000 aged care workers, right? Rest home workers.
Oh, look, I haven't said about anything that might or might not be in the budget package, but the reality is we've been keen to settle this for the best part of 2 years, as have the unions. There's been a pretty intense choreography around that. And this is a very historic day, a massive $2 billion pay rise for 55,000 workers who are on average $16 to $18. So, I mean, it's just going to be massive for those people.
Yes. Can we talk about this as a pay equity case? Earlier in the interview, you talked about women, and they are overwhelmingly women, these workers.
That's correct.
What does this mean as a precedent? Because we have the courts in the first instance saying, yes, this is a pay equity issue. We now have the government joining in to the tune of $2 billion. Where does this lead us?
Well, there's a couple of elements to it. So, look, this is all on the back of a court decision on the interpretation of the 1972 Equal Pay Act. As a result of that, there were two strands in the government's response. One was to negotiate to settle this deal, and then the other one was to establish some principles, and they were formulated by a joint working group involved the unions, business, government, to deal with future such claims. And so there'll be a bill passed soon to put that framework into legislation, and that will mean that other groups will be able to test the merits of their pay equity claim against that framework. So there will be a pathway there. But it doesn't suddenly mean, though, that there'll necessarily be, a massive outbreak of pay rises right across the country. I mean, there are conditions that have to be met for something to be defined as a pay equity issue, and they're all outlined in the joint principles. But one of the principal ones is that there's pretty much a single payer, and so there's not a wider market for people to go and exercise their skills. And so for care and support workers, the payer is essentially the government. So the argument was, their work was undervalued, and if they were men doing work of equivalent value, they would have been paid more, and there was no market for them to go and take their skills elsewhere to be paid a higher rate than pretty much not far off the minimum wage for the vast majority of them.
So 55,000 people are going to get a substantial pay rise.
They will. 55,000 people getting $2 billion over 5 years. If you're on the minimum wage, you are going to be taking home from 1st July, an extra $5,500 in the hand, and I'm pretty happy about that.
55,000 workers, but the very first of them was Christine Bartlett, who was standing by. Christine, I know you're listening, and we're about to come to you. Bartlett versus Terra Nova is now part of New Zealand's legal history. She was a Service and Food Workers Union member on the minimum wage. Terra Nova were her employer. But what made the case unique was that it was fought on the back of the Equal Pay Act of 1972. Christine Bartlett and the union argued that she was so poorly paid, despite years of experience, because hers was a job predominantly done by women. First, the Employment Court upheld their case, and domino after domino fell until today. Union members have gathered at the Loaves and Fishes Hall near Parliament, and Christine Bartlett is there on live view. Christine, it is so lovely to talk to you. How has your day been?
I don't know if I can do much talking. My mouth's so sore, I think I've got lockjaw. It's been overwhelmingly exciting. It's been so exciting, John. Oh yeah, it's just unbelievable. I'm on cloud nine. I'm just so happy for all the carers and care supporters that now can live, hopefully out of poverty, and just live a normal life. You know, it's been so tough for them. And oh yeah, it's just been overwhelming, John. I'd just like to thank the government for stepping up and coming to this agreement, which is wonderful. I didn't realise it was $2 billion, but I thought it was half. So that makes it more exciting to hear that as well, yeah. So it's been a pretty busy day from 7 o'clock this morning to, it's 5 o'clock now. I haven't had anything to eat since breakfast. I'm really tired and exhausted, but hey, I'll talk to you all night. You're all wonderful. You were the first to support this case, John, and you know, you've just got so much love and care within you.
Well, that's a lovely thing to say, but hold on a sec. I didn't go into bat on behalf of a sector with 55,000 workers in it, predominantly women, who were being 20,000 of you doing this tough, important work on the minimum wage. You did. You put your name to that. And at first, because I remember you, it was lonely and you were being vilified and ostracised and no one wanted to talk to you. Even some of your own colleagues were cutting you adrift. Why did you do
You're
this?
Right.
And did you ever dream of today?
I did this, John, because it had to be done. It was the right thing to do. We could not carry on living on the minimum wage, and nothing was going to change. It was going to be minimum wage after minimum wage, every year 50 cents increase. Nobody can live on that. And I could see that a lot of people were struggling, and that breaks my heart to think that. And, you know, where we were going nowhere. So this is why I stood up for it. And after 5 years of battling, I never gave up hope. As the years went by, John, I had so many more supporters clinging behind me, on the side of me, in front of me. It was wonderful. That's what's kept me strong. All these lovely supporters. The Service and Food Workers Union, my former Service and Food Workers Union, were just absolutely brilliant now. Etu, all the coalition women groups, Judy McGregor, she wasn't here today, unfortunately. I really would have loved to have seen her.
Yeah, Christine.
Yeah, so it's just been.
It's been an amazing day, but it's been an amazing 5 years for you. And part of the negotiating brief included a settlement for you, a private settlement for you, because of course it was you against Terra Nova in the first instance. So we're going to set that aside. But for someone like you, who was on the minimum wage, you have no qualification in this area, but you have 12 years experience, and we hear from everyone that you're fantastic at your job. This would see your rate, or her rate, go from $15.75 to $23.50 an hour, rising to $27 an hour by July 2017. What kind of difference will that make to the lives of people exactly like you?
A total life changer. That'll be the biggest pay rise we'll ever get, ever. Yes, it'll just, as I say, bring them out of poverty, be able to live with dignity. It's just, I guarantee a lot of people tonight, caregivers and care support workers and disability workers, are not going to be able to sleep tonight because they're going to be so excited waiting for that first check, pay check come in on the 1st of July, I think it is, they said. So, yeah, so there's a lot of people are going to be celebrating tonight or in the weekend. Yep.
It's tough work, isn't it? The Minister, did the Minister come and shake your hand earlier? A photo came beaming in from May Heron Arab. Look, we've just whacked the photo up. So the Minister came and shook your hand. So that's what you've achieved, right? Yeah, $2 billion from the government.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Over 5 years, we should say. It's tough work, but you feel at long last people are being paid what they're worth.
And it was so well worth it, wasn't it? Look what's happened after never giving up. Never give up. Stand tall. Women all out there, don't ever give in. Stand up for your rights. No matter what you do or what you want, you stand up for your rights, because in the end, you can win it.
And you did win it. Christine Bartlett, thank you so much for joining us live from Loaves and Fishes. Christine Bartlett v Terra Nova was the case with the Service and Food Workers Union with which this all began. 55,000 workers, as we keep saying. What do other aged care workers think? Well, the Elizabeth Knox Home and Hospital in Auckland admits both subsidised and fee-paying private residents. Zach Fleming went to visit and found it might mean replacing the old car with a newer model and maybe taking the kids to the movies.
55-year-old Beryl Wilson has 23 years of experience working in aged care. She's paid $19 something an hour at the Elizabeth Knox Home and Hospital in Auckland. She's not quite sure of the exact amount, but knows that despite her experience, it's still less than the living wage of $20.20 an hour.
There's a lot of training. To be a proper care, there's a lot of training. You know, you don't do it in 12 months. I don't think you do it. We do a 4-year step. I don't think you learn it in 4 years. I think it's a daily learning. 20 years and I'm still learning, you know. You can't just bring somebody in and say, here, do that job. So then don't tell me it's unskilled.
Have you ever had someone say that to you, or are you just, reading things? Has anyone actually ever come up to you and said, anyone can do your job, it's easy?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Really?
Glorified cleaner. You're a glorified cleaner. We're here, not just here, UK is the same, you know what I mean? They think, if you want to jack in because you're complaining, you leave, we'll get somebody for your job tomorrow. Yeah, physically you can get somebody for my job tomorrow, yeah. But they wouldn't be as good as me.
One woman I spoke with at Elizabeth Knox had 5 years' experience and, until last week when she got a pay rise, was on the minimum wage, just $15.75 an hour, or around $32,000 a year. So, Beryl's $19 an hour is more than most. But after more than 2 decades, she still doesn't think she's paid what she's actually worth. Her eyes widened and a little smile appeared when I asked her what difference a small pay rise of a few dollars an hour would mean.
It would mean a new car for me. That's seriously what it would mean, a new car. My car's running on borrowed time and God bless it, So it would mean a new car. So I've never had that, and I have struggled, but I get by. I'd get a new car.
That's a huge thing. I mean, you walk into work one day and someone says, I'm giving you this pay rise, and you go, okay, I'm getting a new car.
Yes, I would. That's honestly, because I don't know how long my car's going to last. Seriously, it's 1995 or something, it's dying, bless it. And if it dies, then I'm really stuffed. Because getting to work on the weekends, task in New Zealand.
Then I asked if she'd ever considered a different career because, at the end of the day, passion doesn't pay the bills. She didn't even blink.
I've been in the category where my family's moved to Taranui and my sister can get us a job sitting answering a phone on more money, and I've still declined to take it. I've still stayed. That's why I can honestly say, hand on heart, it's not about the money. Yeah, I could have went 3-4 years ago and getting $20 an hour answering a phone for somebody. It's not me.
Elizabeth Knox has 192 residents. Most days that means a ratio of between 6 to 8 residents per care worker.
Get them up to the toilet, and then from there we start showering them and dress them up, and then just transfer them on their wheelchair. That's for the day for them.
That's Sa Tavanga. She's 63 in October and has a lot in common with Beryl. 23 years experience in the industry, paid $19 something an hour, loves her job, but unflinchingly doesn't think she's paid what she's worth.
Oh, I need some more pay. I need some more money for because I'm paying the mortgage and I'm helping my family.
And without sounding like a broken record, Alex Nanai, who's 26, feels exactly the same. He used to work in 2 rest homes to make ends meet.
At Cornwall Park and Elizabeth Knox, doing 7 to 3 and then starting here 4 to 10. So that was 5 days a week.
So you're working 15 hours a day, 5 days a week?
Yeah, because I had to pay my rent and my son's in private school. Yeah, trying to provide the best education for him. So, and then trying to survive in Auckland.
For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.
25 minutes past 5 in about 2 seconds now. Coming up on the program, a manhunt continues in the US after the Easter Sunday murder of an elderly man was posted on Facebook. Sir Peter Snell's golden gift to Te Papa. We talked to him about it and about the reception he has received in New Zealand. Did he understand how warmly he was regarded? Also, the McKenzie country and the water there. A special report from Kate Gudsall. We'd love to hear from you in any way you choose. Text us 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, Facebook Checkpoint with John Campbell, or email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. We're on Sky, Channel 83, Face TV. We're on Freeview Channel 50. We're on the RNZ website. And, of course, we are on the radio. However you are joining us, thank you for doing so. A manhunt is continuing in the US after the Easter Sunday murder of an elderly man in Cleveland was posted on Facebook. Authorities have pledged a $50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of Steve Stevens, who is still at large. Bridget Burke reports.
We're still employing Steve to turn himself in. Definitely to contact a relative or friend, because there are a lot of folks out there that want to talk to him, want to get this resolved peacefully. So, Steve, if you're out there listening, call someone, whether it's a friend or family member or pastor. Give them a call, because they're waiting on you to call them.
Cleveland police boss Calvin Williams calling on murder suspect Steve Stevens to give himself up, as authorities warned residents across 5 states to be vigilant.
Our reach now is basically all over this country. Our federal partners, our local partners have reached out to their contacts all over the country, and this is what we would consider a national search.
In an act described by officials as senseless, 37-year-old Stevens was broadcasting live on Facebook as he got out of his car yesterday and approached 74-year-old pedestrian Robert Goodwin Sr. He then told the elderly Cleveland man he was about to die before pulling the trigger and shooting him dead. In the video, Stevens blames the shooting on an ex-girlfriend.
I'm at the point where I snap. See, the thing is, man, every time I try to talk to y'all, man, y'all always me off or just make my shit seem like it ain't shit. I got a lot of built-in anger and frustration, man.
Stevens then goes on to say Robert Goodwin's murder isn't his first.
I snapped, dog. I just snapped, dog. I just snapped. I just killed 13 man. That's what I did. I killed 13 people, and I'm about to keep killing until they catch me.
But police say they are at a loss to explain why the murder happened and have been unable to link it to any others.
To be honest, we've interviewed several people involved in this. And I don't think there's any rhyme or reason for it happening. I don't think there's anything that we can point to specifically to say that this is what sparked this. Only Steve knows that. Hopefully we can find him soon, and then we'll get to talk to him and find out exactly why he did this.
The video was available online for 3 hours after the murder before Stevens' profile was deactivated. Facebook released this statement.
This is a horrific crime, and we do not allow this kind of content on Facebook and are in touch with law enforcement in emergencies where there are direct threats to public safety.
Mr. Goodwin's family says they are heartbroken at the randomness of the incident.
I hate he's gone, you know what I mean? I don't know what I'm going to do. He's a good guy.
Very good-hearted.
Keep the shirt off his back.
For the past 9 years, Stevens has worked as a vocational specialist and youth mentor at a behavioural health agency just outside Cleveland. He has no criminal record.
Again, there are a lot of things that go on in people's lives, and we at this point cannot concentrate on one issue that may or may not have led to this. There are a lot of things going on in his life, I'm sure, as evident by what's happened, but we're not going to pinpoint a specific thing and say that's what triggered this, because we don't know. And when we talk to him, we'll be able to find out more about that.
The police have now asked the FBI for assistance, with the Cleveland Mayor Frank Jackson offering a reward for information on Stevens' whereabouts.
Well, we want to announce that there is an award of up to $50,000 for the arrest of Mr. Steve Stevens. The money comes from the FBI, ATF, and the Marshal Service. We also want to emphasize that that we are still engaged in a very aggressive and very focused attempt to find Steve Stevens and bring him to justice.
Stevens' former girlfriend has been taken into protective custody as the search for him continues. For Checkpoint, Bridget Burke.
We head now to the McKenzie country in South Canterbury with a pinch of North Otago. Their once pristine lakes are showing the ill effects of land intensification as irrigation changes the face of one of New Zealand's rarest ecosystems. Some locals are worried it's reached a tipping point and the much-loved landscape may be completely destroyed. It's been at the centre of a 10-year court battle after farmers and landowners opposed tougher development rules proposed by the McKenzie District Council. In a just-released decision, the Environment Court has found that pastoral intensification and agricultural conversion in the McKenzie Basin is often inappropriate and unsustainable. The decision says large areas of the basin that hold inherent values are being lost quickly. Our environment reporter Kate Gudsell went to meet some of those fighting to save the alpine basin beneath the Southern Alps.
This is a central McKenzie Basin, this huge, big, open vista, this open, vast landscape which people love. There's no clutter. If you look right across, you can see for 20 kilometres across there.
Rosalie Snowyink helped form the McKenzie Guardians in 2009 as a result of 110 applications to take and use water in the region. 8 years later, she and others are still fighting to protect the lake and mountain-studded area after a loophole in the McKenzie District Plan allowed vegetation to be oversown with crops and fertiliser. Rosalie Snowyink says it's reached a tipping point and she's questioning how this has been allowed to happen.
The land did not have enough protection in place and the growth and the development has simply overtaken in the meantime, and this is this incredible loss that has occurred and there's not been regulation to control it.
The McKenzie Basin is made up of rare glacial-derived ecosystems that aren't replicated to the same extent elsewhere in New Zealand or the world. It's home to some of the country's rarest wildlife, including endangered river birds like the wrybill and black stilt, and plants such as red tussock. Department of Conservation evidence provided as part of an ongoing court case around plan changes says since 2000, intensive agricultural practices using cultivation and irrigation have caused widespread and permanent loss of these ecosystems and Indigenous biodiversity. Forest and Birds Canterbury and West Coast Regional Manager Jen Miller says no one ever anticipated the degree of intensification that's occurred in the McKenzie Basin. That makes her very sad, not just personally, but for others who genuinely love this landscape.
They love to tell that story about ourselves, you know, the southern man, that sort of romantic notion of us as New Zealanders, the pristine blue glacial lakes. But actually, when you look at the green and you look at the pivot irrigators, you're looking at the slow, incremental destruction of those values.
Omarama and Waitaki has been particularly affected, with nearly half of its alluvial ecosystems destroyed since 2000, and almost 40% of its glacial deposit ecosystems also lost. Glider Gavin Wills is taking me through some photos he's taken of the region from the air.
Again, looking from Pukaki to the west towards Burke's Pass and north of the Maori Range, all of this will become green in time.
Gavin Wills has been visiting Omarama since the 1960s and has lived here for 20 years. He's not only worried about changes to the land, but also the local waterways. The Omarama stream runs behind his property, and he says 10 years ago it was completely clear. There was no sediment or mud on the edge, or weeds like there are now.
I'm not an expert at all, I just am a local observer. I sit here and look at the river and notice that there's foam and froth on it, or that it's very cloudy. I notice I keep my grandchildren out of the river in case they catch something nasty.
A Canterbury Regional Council report looking at the water quality of the Waitaki catchment's lakes found while most are in good ecological health, its clear land use is having a negative impact. The Ahuriri arm of Lake Benmore has also exceeded the objectives set to measure a lake's health in recent years and has higher concentrations of nutrients in inflowing tributaries than other large lakes in the area. The Omarama stream feeds into the Ahuriri River. Richard Subtil farms the Omarama station. He has 560 hectares of centre pivot irrigators, which is farm funded. His farm is one of 7 on the stream that are working together to voluntarily provide water quality data to the council. He says he wouldn't want to leave a deteriorated waterway as his legacy.
I know that there are areas of excess where people haven't done the right thing, and that really pains me as much as anybody else. But with modern technology and more attention to detail, I'm absolutely confident that we can do this. We can produce things of high value, and that's the key to me. Without impacting the waterways.
Mr Subtil concedes there are farmers who aren't as conscientious, but he thinks this is changing and that more thought needs to be put into what areas are irrigated.
I think it's regrettable when people build infrastructure right by the side of the road. I do think that if a lot of stuff was hidden a bit further from the road, we would get a lot less airtime than the big pivots that are parallel with the state highway.
Last year, an agreement was drawn up to prevent further exploitation of the loophole in the McKenzie District Plan and will be enforced until the end of the year, while a permanent change to planning rules is drawn up. For Checkpoint, ko Kate Goodsaltene.
That was part of an RNZ series on water. You can hear more tomorrow morning report and read more in-depth pieces on our website, radionz.co.nz. Coming up between now and 6, Donald Trump and North Korea, the Medical Association. Peter Snell and Edgecombe gets a support package, known with business. But first, with the 5:36 headlines on time, Katrina Batten.
The government has agreed to a $2 billion pay equity settlement for about 55,000 care and support workers. It follows the 2013 employment court win by caregiver Christine Bartlett, who argued her low pay rate was gender discrimination under the Equal Pay Act. From July the 1st, the mainly female workforce will get a pay rise of between about 15 and 49%, depending on their qualifications and experience. The Health Minister, Jonathan Coleman, says wages will be raised to between $19 and $27 an hour over 5 years. In a just-released decision, the Environment Court has found dairy conversions and intensive farming in the McKenzie Basin are unsustainable and shouldn't be happening. It follows a 10-year court battle over planning changes the McKenzie District Council wants to make to restrict development. The Chief Executive of the Environmental Defence Society, Gary Taylor, says the decision is scathing of the position adopted by federated farmers in opposing the protection of the McKenzie Basin. The government will give an extra $700,000 to businesses affected by flooding in Edgecombe and the wider Bay of Plenty. More than half of the funding will help rural families with living costs, and the Rural Support Trust's work assisting farmers to assess crop damage. The Labour Party is calling for extra housing to be set up in Edgecombe for those displaced by the floods. The entire town was evacuated more than a week ago, and while most people have returned, the Whakatane District Council says about 250 houses are not yet safe to live in. The government yesterday started a service connecting locals with temporary accommodation in the region, such as holiday homes. It's also looking into setting up a temporary housing village. Vegetable prices have surged after heavy rain and flooding in the past 2 months caused root rot disease in crops. A vegetable supplier says it will take months before the flood-damaged crops are back to normal. Foodstuffs and progressive enterprises say their supermarkets throughout the country have been affected by the price increases. Those are the headlines. I'll be back at 6.
Thanks, Katrina. 6 isn't very far away, is it? Let's turn to business news now with Nona Peltier. Nona, the market reaction to the government's $2 billion going into the aged care sector over 5 years. We often talk about companies like Ryman who are doing very, very nicely, but this is a sector that is diverse with not-for-profit, church organisations.
Right.
Yeah, so what's been the response to all of this?
Well, I spoke to an analyst this afternoon who's done a lot of work in this sector, Jeremy Simpson from Forsyth Bar. He thought that it was a very positive for the industry because especially in the smaller private care facilities where they don't have a lot of beds, it's been very difficult for them. I mean, the subsidy, 80 to 90% of the people in aged care beds are subsidized by the government. They're not rich people, that's just not the way it is. 80 to 90%. The subsidy's been very low, and it's made it really difficult for small facilities that don't have the scale to really provide services. So this is going to help them because it's going to improve the ability for them to pay their staff a reasonable wage for the work that they do. So that's going to be a big plus for the industry.
Aging
overall.
population means there's greater demand, right? More beds required,
and
longer life expectancy.
It doesn't necessarily mean that it will increase the number of beds that the listed companies have in their works right now, but it certainly will improve some of their bottom line performance because they've been kind of cross-subsidizing some of those aged care beds, and that's one of the reasons why some of the companies don't have very many of them, because they're expensive to have. Often the subsidy that the government's been providing has not been adequate, even to cover a minimum wage.
Actually, there were figures, and I lost them. But
I don't have them in front of me.
My own fault, but I remember that more than half of aged care beds aren't in the high-profit facilities like Ryman, Somerset, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and even the beds that are, in fact, an awful lot of them, 80 to 90%. Are government subsidized. Yeah. So that's quite a high number. Never mind, though, the market had a funny reaction to it. It came late in the day, towards the end of the trading. So all of the listed retirement village operators, their share prices were down a little bit, varying degrees. Somerset was down 3%. That's 15 cents. Ryman was just down 11 cents, 1.25%. Arvida, just a little bit. 1 cent only, and same with MetLife Care, so also 1 cent down. So the market was a little bit not too sure about this, but in the end, I spoke with the chief executive of Somerset, and he said it's a relief to the industry. This has been going on a long time. It's created a lot of uncertainty. It's nice to have it settled, and it's great for their workers. So overall, it's a good news story for the industry and for the people who work in it.
We talked to the industry later on. In fact, we talked to the organisation who supported an appeal against us all the way to the Supreme Court, who are now saying, yep, it's good. So
everybody's happy, I think.
Road to Damascus, far and wide. What did the markets do today?
Okay, so our NZX Top 50 Index, it ended up a little change, just 4 points to 7,234. The New Zealand dollar was somewhat steady, except against the Australian dollar. It jumped a half a cent in that case. That's because the Australian Central Bank said they were having a bit of difficulty managing the performance of the labour market, rising household debt over there. And... Oh, did I give you the numbers? 70.1 US cents, 92.7 Australian, and 55.8 pence.
Thank you very much, Nona Peltier, in the Auckland studio beside me. In 1960, Peter Snell won an Olympic gold in Rome. In 1964, Peter Snell won 2 Olympic golds in Tokyo. In 2017, today to be precise, 2 of those 3 gold medals were gifted to Te Papa. Other treasures were gifted too, a tankard from a time when people were given tankards, in this case for breaking the world mile record. One of the shoes he wore in the 800 metres final in Rome, handmade by Arthur Lydiard, still a striking and modern-looking object more than half a century on. All of this happened at Te Papa this morning. And afterwards, I noticed on the live view that Sir Peter didn't have an Olympic gold around his neck, but something greener.
Well, it's a beautiful piece of greenstone that was presented to me by 2 charming Maori ladies at the ceremony here at Te Papa. And I have forgotten what they call this. Manaya? It's a manaya, John. And it is just absolutely... Can you see that?
Yeah, I can. It's beautiful. It's beautiful work.
It is beautiful, absolutely. So I am going to treasure this. What a wonderful job Te Papa has done, not only in displaying this stuff so tastefully, but this ceremony was just absolutely incredible. I am going to take this to my grave, I'm sure.
I wonder if you understood how loved and admired you are in this country. I wonder if you are just coming to grips with that now.
Well, I have felt that a bit in the past, but this has been way more. This actually, I had to get the tissue out in order to get through this experience. So yes, I actually do feel that, and that's why I feel so good about Te Papa having this memorabilia. It's really a perfect fit. It makes me feel good about trying to return how New Zealanders have expressed their feelings about me and what I've done, and vice versa.
The wonderful thing is that many of the youngsters, all of the youngsters who were there today, in fact anyone who isn't middle-aged basically, wasn't born when you won in Tokyo, when you won in Rome, and yet they know it's part of their sense of New Zealand history. And the kids from your old school, Mount Albert Grammar, looking so proud, so sparkly-eyed. That must be magic, that stuff.
Yes, it is, and I think we have to thank YouTube for a lot of this highlight stuff, which has kept things alive. And so I think I owe my recognition to Google.
No, nothing wrong with that. I have to say, I've been watching on YouTube and I'd forgotten that kick you had at the end. Boy, you had a formidable finish, didn't you?
Yeah, well, when you're cruising towards the end, it's possible to get that extra gear or two, and that's what the endurance training was all about, to be able to cruise while the others were struggling a bit. And so part of it was that I looked as though I was running faster, and it probably was a little, but the others were also starting to die.
Yeah, they were. Your finishes were quite remarkable. You were still pulling away in the 1500 when you won gold. I mean, the distance between you and second place was daylight, effectively. Do you remember the races?
Yeah. Yeah, I very clearly, and especially the Rome one, well, and also the Tokyo ones as well. But I did learn after Rome the power of being able to make a dramatic move on the psychological effect it had on your opposition. George Kerr did that to me in Napier, and I remember I gave up when he came by so fast, and then I nearly caught him at the tape, and I thought, darn it, if I hadn't have sort of tossed it in, that wouldn't have happened. And so I've always tried to do that to others with that in mind.
Can you tell me of the wonderful treasures that Te Papa now has that you have given them? Is there one that is particularly special to you? I mean, obviously there's the gold medals, but is there one that really stands out?
Yeah, well, that's it. They did select other things that, to me, are not as significant, but to them, they tell the story. For example, it's the medal. It's specifically the Rome medal is the biggie, because that was such a surprise that launched me as an international class athlete. It changed my life. The Tokyo medals were more a confirmation of what I demonstrated that I could do, and that was sort of satisfying. That was satisfying, but the Rome medal, that was the first, that was the big one, and that's the most treasured.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you went to Tokyo so overwhelmingly the favourite. You were running the fastest times in the world. You were way better in terms of times than anyone else in the field. But in Rome, you totally were a surprise package.
Absolutely. Yeah, in fact, there were some commentators thought that the first round heat was a sham because there were only 4 of us in it. The other 3 were world-ranked runners. And so why even bother have the race?
57 years ago. And now you've come home and your medals have come home. It's magic, isn't it?
It is. Well, that's how Te Papa have promoted it. Medal-winning magic. Nice. It has a nice ring to it.
Sir Peter Snell, A battle is underway for the top job of the century-old New Zealand Medical Association. The position of association chair is up for re-election, and a student is one of the contenders, but not everyone is happy, as our health correspondent Karen Brown reports.
The New Zealand Medical Association is a key group in health, representing the professional interests of all doctors and advocating on medical and political issues. Some are upset, however, that a sixth-year medical student, Liz Berryman, has her sights on the top job, against GP leaders Kate Baddock and Tane Taylor. Ms Berryman, a former qualified nurse and former head of the Medical Students Association, says there are 14,000 registered doctors in this country, but just 5,500 are members of the association.
The New Zealand Medical Association has been around for over 100 years and has a very proud history where the majority of doctors were members of this association. And I think that now it's reached a critical point where only 20% are members, so we really need to have radical change.
On whether a student could have the experience and nous to lead a national organisation of other senior and junior doctors, she is clear.
I have the experience and the ability to be able to do this role, and I don't think it should be about your age, your gender, your position in a hierarchy system, or your job title. It should be about whether you're the right person for the role.
And on the criticism of some that she won't have time as a trainee doctor for the requirements of the role, she says that's wrong too.
I also sit on many boards, commercial boards, and my husband and I run a very busy business. So I have definitely got experience in managing my time, and I have the full support of my university to do this.
Ms Berryman adds that if elected chair, she'll put work as a first-year house officer or junior hospital doctor on hold. Adding interest is that 44% of association members are medical students who could block vote for Ms Berryman. Stephen Child is the outgoing association chair.
We have students, because they pay $40 for their membership throughout their entire medical school, we have a high membership of students, and they are going to be a high voting bloc, and this may turn out that Liz gets good support.
Dr Child says Ms Berryman is impressive, but her candidacy raises major questions for the organisation.
I think the question is really about, can a person who is not a member of the profession yet, is not a qualified doctor yet, have credibility when she is speaking on behalf of the profession? As far as we're aware, this is unprecedented for any student of any professional organisation.
He adds fulfilling the duties of chair occupied him for 71 days over the past 2 years.
As far as I'm aware, it'll be very difficult to be a medical student and to spend 71 days away from medical school as well. So I think there's a time concern that we have. There's a concern for Liz's ability to fulfill the role. And there's also, as I say, the concern about her credibility to represent the organisation.
The Medical Council Chair, Andrew Connolly, says it's a unique set of circumstances for the important group and all members should vote.
I'd encourage all members to consider the skill set of the three applicants and make an informed vote, not only for that role, but also on the other roles that have people standing.
Voting closes Wednesday, April 26, with a decision expected about a week later. For Checkpoint, Karen Brown.
Donald Trump is warning that North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un has got to behave as the war of words escalates between Washington and Pyongyang. North Korea's ambassador to the United States, though, says the US is pushing his country to the brink of nuclear war, which could break out at any time. CNN's White House correspondent Jim Acosta reports that what may happen next just isn't clear.
Mr. President, how does it feel to have the whole Trump family with you today, sir? Great. President Trump is hardly walking on eggshells when it comes to handling North Korea. With his family by his side at the White House Easter egg roll, the president all but told North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un to cut it out. Any message for North Korea, sir? Kim Jong-un.
Gotta behave.
Even though the White House has been flexing its muscles lately with high-profile military strikes in Syria and Afghanistan, the president told us he hopes North Korea will choose the path of peace. Mr. President, do you think North Korea can be resolved peacefully, sir? What are your thoughts on Kim Jong-un?
Hopefully it can.
White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer told CNN the president is counting on China's help. Over the weekend, the president defended his decision not to label China a currency manipulator, asking why would he do that when they are working with us on the North Korean problem. We'll see what happens.
Because he's sort of let China off the hook.
No, I wouldn't say he's let them off the hook. He understands that they can play a very important role in making our world safer, and we're going to utilize the relationships that he's built with President Xi.
But Democrats worry the president's rhetoric is getting too overheated, arguing there's no military solution with an unstable regime boasting nuclear ambitions.
I think because of the unevenness of his statements and positions which he has taken thus far, it is highly unclear as to whether or not he has the ability to be able to think this thing through in a way that avoids an actual military showdown between the United States and North Korea.
One thing the White House says it won't do is draw a red line for North Korea to define just how far the communist country can go in its provocations. Spicer noted red lines didn't work in the Obama administration's efforts to stop atrocities in Syria.
Does the president have a red line when it comes to North Korea, that if they cross it, they will bring about some kind of military response from the U.S.?
I think what we talked about, you know, the use of red lines in the past with respect to Syria, the president's made that drawing red lines hasn't really worked in the past. He holds his cards close to the vest, and I think you're not going to see him telegraphing how he's going to respond to any military or other situation going forward.
Sean Spicer ending that report from CNN. The Department of Conservation is putting up barriers to deter thieves from helping themselves to a stash of whale bones that have just been uncovered after 150 years. The bones were found on Sunday on the Kaikoura Peninsula after heavy rain washed away the sand that was covering them. This report from Logan Church.
The storm following Cyclone Cook may have closed roads and cut off power, but it also uncovered a treasure trove on the Kaikoura Peninsula. The Department of Conservation's community ranger, Brett Cohen, says a vast collection of whale bones was uncovered on Sunday after heavy rains exposed their remains.
Over the last few days, an area of ground 1 metre deep and 15 metres wide has been scoured out at the river mouth, exposing whale bone that have been deposited from a whaling station that was there in the 1980s.
A team of volunteers loaded the bone onto flatbed utes before taking them to a nearby shed for safekeeping. Mr. Cohen says the discovery has already been a target for thieves, and he drove out to the site this morning with barriers and signs.
The area is a no-take area. It's okay for people to view and to observe what is going on, but the bones are only being removed for their protection, but the area actually comes under New Zealand Heritage under one of their protections.
The site was the location of Waipuka Station, a successful shore whaling operation in the mid-1800s. The Canterbury Museum Natural History curator, Paul Schofield, says this is an important archaeological discovery. From looking at photographs from the scene, he says the bones are an almost complete skeleton of a southern right whale, one of the most commonly caught whales at the station. But Dr. Schofield says such a discovery now is rare.
Certainly on the New Zealand coast today, they'd be very rare. Most recently, there have been several sperm whales and even blue whales wash up on beaches around the South Island. But it's been a number of years since a southern right floated ashore.
Whaling began in Kaikoura in the 1840s, when the founder of the town, Robert Fife, set up the commercial whaling station. Te Papa history curator, Casey Cooper, says shore whaling was a cruel way to kill whales, but the industry thrived because the products were so useful to early settlers.
You'd have these huge tripods or big vats that you'd put the blubber in and then boil it down to create or render the oil, because it was oil that was sort of prized for use for cooking and lighting and for lubricant and things. And then you also had the whalebone that was used for corsetry and for sort of supports for chairs and various uses like that.
Community ranger Brett Cohen would like to see if the whole skeleton could be put together, but the focus is now on keeping the bones safe and covered up.
It's a great stash of bones that are there. It'll be an excellent archaeological project in terms of, if one was to be replicated. But, that's just a pipe dream. However, at this stage, the responsibility is for their protection, and we'll have a discussion on what happens later.
Mr. Cohen says the bones will be kept in storage while the Department of Conservation decides what to do with the collection. For Checkpoint, call Logan Church Tene.
1.5 minutes away from the news, which gives me an opportunity to read some of the feedback we've received. It's lovely tonight. I know it's only April, but I think it's safe to say we already have our New Zealander of the Year. Congratulations, Christine Bartlett. You Kiwi battler, you, says Helen. Christine was on the show earlier, of course. My darling 84-year-old mother is physically disabled, but has all her marbles. She uses a Kindle and her computer, yet needs complete assistance with her dressing and washing, etc. Her carers at Wesley not only do all of that for her, but also provide companionship and love. I can't thank them enough, and to know they will get a living wage is a huge celebration and is the best news ever, says Juliet. A huge shout out to all the aged care workers getting a pay rise, well overdue. You do a fantastic job. My mother-in-law has dementia and is so well cared for at Shoal Bay Rest Home, so caring, so compassionate. There is no way our family could care for her like they do. And Heather says, just listening and heard the news about pay rise for care workers, tears in my eyes thinking about the workforce who care for some of our most vulnerable citizens and are finally being recognised for their incredible contribution to our community. Not only is this placing value on their work, it's recognising the humanity of the people they support to prepare and engage and be in the world each day. Thank you for your feedback. Lots of it tonight. We really appreciate hearing from you. Our email address is checkpoint@radionz.co.nz, which has just gone up on the screen. Clever, Kelvin. And our text is 2101. We are, of course, on Twitter and Facebook, and you can watch us in a multitudinous variety of ways on screens wherever you care to look.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui, good evening. Ko Katrina Basin aho. The government has agreed to a $2 billion pay equity settlement for care and support workers. In 2013, caregiver Christine Bartlett successfully argued in the Employment Court her low hourly pay rate was a result of gender discrimination under the Equal Pay Act. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Chris Bramwell.
The Prime Minister, Bill English, says rather than going through a prolonged court process, the government decided to try for a negotiated settlement. He says as a result, Cabinet agreed to the $2 billion package to be delivered over the next 5 years to the 55,000 affected workers. From July the 1st, the predominantly female workforce will receive a pay rise of between 15 and 49%, depending on their qualifications and experience. Unions have commended the government for agreeing to negotiate, rather than waiting for years before the legal process was exhausted. Atu e te whare pārimata ko Chris Bramwell aho.
Christine Bartlett says after years of struggling on low wages, she hopes care and support workers will now have a bit left over to actually enjoy life. The Environment Court has found that intensive farming and conversion to dairy in the McKenzie Basin is unsustainable and shouldn't be happening. It follows a 10-year court battle over a change to the McKenzie District Council's plan, which proposed tougher rules on development. The proposed changes have been opposed by farmers and landowners and largely supported by environment groups. The decision says large areas of the basin that hold inherent values are being lost quickly. And Jen Miller of Forest and Bird says the intensification is destroying a landscape people love.
They love to tell that story about ourselves, you know, the southern man, that sort of romantic notion of us as New Zealanders, the pristine blue glacial lakes. But actually, when you look at the green and you look at the pivot irrigators, you're looking at the slow, incremental destruction of those values.
Forest and Bird's Jen Miller. The government is making an extra $700,000 available for businesses affected by the flooding in Edgecombe and the Bay of Plenty. $200,000 of that money will be available to help rural families with essential living costs, and $250,000 will assist the Rural Support Trust to help farmers and growers to assess crop damage. The rest will go towards a disaster relief fund to support businesses. A vegetable supplier says some crops have been completely destroyed because of flood damage. Vegetable prices have surged because heavy rain and flooding during March and April caused root rot disease in crops, and vegetables were ruined. Edward O'Driscoll reports.
Foodstuffs and Progressive Enterprises say their supermarkets throughout the country have been affected by the price increases. Beans, broccoli, salads, silver beet, lettuce and spinach are all in short supply, leading to a spike in retail prices. A live-in supplier, Woodhaven Gardens, has over 1,000 acres of crops. Its production manager, Adam Jury, says in some recently sown paddocks there has been 100% crop loss, but older crops could be saved if the soil dries out. He says they will take a financial hit as they won't be sending supermarkets as many vegetables as they did this time last year. Ko Edward O'Driscoll tēnei.
A Wellington lawyer who is part of an advisory service for quake-affected Christchurch residents says people in Marlborough will need help navigating the fine print of insurance claims. The Insurance Council is warning those with large mortgages who make claims on quake-damaged homes that banks can enforce how they spend their payouts. The Council's Chief Executive, Tim Grafton, says recent changes to how settlements are paid have highlighted that long-standing rule. Lawyer John Goddard says the government made sure everyone could get free legal advice in Christchurch, and the same is needed in Marlborough.
Especially for the communities which are more isolated, they need a boost just to be able to recover. Otherwise, that recovery will end up being more painful and will take longer.
Lawyer John Goddard, who advised quake-affected Christchurch residents. The police in Papua New Guinea have condemned the Good Friday attack on Australia's refugee detention centre as unethical and unacceptable actions of drunken soldiers. Members of the PNG Defence Force are alleged to have shot at the Manus Island facility more than 100 times following an altercation with asylum seekers at a nearby football field. The Manus Provincial Police Commander, Senior Inspector David Yapu, says the soldiers went on a rampage through the centre, assaulting police, immigration officers, service providers and asylum seekers. He set up a team to investigate the incident and has vowed to leave no stone unturned until someone answers for what happened. It's 6:05. The athletics legend Sir Peter Snell says today's ceremony at Te Papa is something that will stay with him for the rest of his life. An emotional Snell presented 14 pieces of memorabilia at the museum this morning, including 2 of his Olympic gold medals.
Actually, I had to get the tissue out in order to get through this experience. That's why I feel so good about Te Papa having this memorabilia. It makes me feel good about how New Zealanders have expressed their feelings about me and vice versa. I am going to take this to my grave, I'm sure.
Sir Peter Snell. A handful of England's best players in the Six Nations are set to miss out on selection for the British and Irish Lions tour of New Zealand. The BBC is reporting that lock Joe Launchbury and centre Jonathan Joseph are both in danger of being shock exclusions from Warren Gatland's squad. England's New Zealand-born captain Dylan Hartley's chances are rated only 50-50. Coach Warren Gatland is set to name his squad tomorrow night. Ben Matulino has been named on the Warriors bench for the Anzac Day clash with the Storm, signalling his NRL comeback is a step closer. The senior prop missed the early stages of the season following knee surgery. Warriors coach Stephen Kearney says Matulino has been making good progress since returning to full training. Matulino's inclusion is the only change made from last week's team, which lost to the Canberra Raiders. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Moira Marsh. She studies humour. She's also a specialist on one of the most notorious books of the Middle Ages, Malleus Maleficarum, or The Witch's Hammer, which would be funny if the Inquisition hadn't taken it so seriously. And this week's pundit is our left-of-centre historian Brian Roper, getting serious about the future of higher education and why neoliberals hate it. On Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Met service weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland and Auckland fine, apart from a few showers in Northland, spreading to Auckland tomorrow. Waikato to Manawatu, including Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty and the Central High Country, mostly fine. However, a few showers about the Central High Country today and from Waitomo southwards tomorrow. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, a few showers, clearing south of Wairoa tonight and elsewhere tomorrow. Horowhenua to Wellington, mainly fine, but a few showers around midday tomorrow. Marlborough and Nelson, mostly fine, however a few showers chiefly about the ranges. Buller and Westland, a few showers for Buller, spreading to Westland tomorrow. Canterbury, what are you laughing at?
A few showers? What, you're going to say it again?
A few showers for Buller, spreading to Westland tomorrow.
Wait.
Canterbury, fine and cloudy periods today. Cloud increasing later tomorrow with a few showers.
With a few showers.
There's always a few showers. Otago, Southland and Fiordland fine today. Mostly cloudy tomorrow with a period of morning rain, followed by isolated showers. And the Chatham Islands, cloudy periods with a few showers.
Few showers.
It's 6:08. John's gone mad and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thank you very much, Katrina. I thought you handled the constant repetition of the phrase a few showers magnificently.
Thank you very much.
Right. Big pay rises are on the way for thousands of some of the lowest paid workers in the health sector. The government announced the historic $2 billion pay equity settlement for 55,000 workers this afternoon. It's over 5 years, of course. The wage boost follows a legal battle by caregiver Christine Bartlett and her union, who successfully argued in the employment court that her low hourly pay rate, in fact she was on the minimum wage after years in the job, was a result of gender discrimination and therefore covered by the Equal Pay Act of 1972. From July the 1st, the predominantly female workforce will receive a pay rise of between 15 and 49%, depending on their qualifications and experience. The Prime Minister building this says rather than going through a prolonged court process, the government decided 2 years ago to try to reach a negotiated settlement.
As a result, Cabinet today agreed to a $2 billion pay equity package to be delivered over the next 5 years to 55,000 care and support workers employed across the aged and residential care sector. The agreement is the result of a complex and detailed negotiation over the past 20 months, and it will deliver a significant pay boost for some of the country's most dedicated and hard-working but lowest paid workers.
Earlier in the program, I spoke to Christine Bartlett, the woman behind this 5-year battle for equal pay. Bartlett v Terra Nova is where it all began. Holding back tears at times, she said, today isn't about a pay rise, it's the difference between poverty and living an enjoyable life.
I guarantee a lot of people tonight, that caregivers and care support workers and disability workers, are not going to be able to sleep tonight because they're going to be so excited waiting for that first check, pay check come in on the 1st of July, I think it is, they said. So yeah, so there's a lot of people are going to be celebrating tonight or in the weekend. Yep.
It's tough work, isn't it? Did the minister come and shake your hand earlier? A photo came beaming in from May Heron Arab. Look, we've just whacked the photo up. So the minister came and shook your hand. So that's what you've achieved, right? Yeah, $2 billion from the government.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Over 5 years, we should say. It's tough work, but you feel at long last people are being paid what they're worth.
And it was so well worth it, wasn't it? Look what's happened after never giving up, never give up, stand tall. Women all out there, don't ever give in. Stand up for your rights, no matter what you do or what you want, you stand up for your rights, because in the end, you can win it.
Christine Bartlett speaking on Checkpoint earlier. That whole interview is online now. The 55,000 workers who will benefit from today's announcements share her thoughts. Zach Fleming visited the Elizabeth Knox home and hospital in Auckland and found out it might mean replacing an old car with a new one and maybe even taking kids to the movies.
55-year-old Beryl Wilson has 23 years of experience working in aged care. She's paid $19 something an hour at the Elizabeth Knox home and hospital in Auckland. She's not quite sure of the exact amount, but knows that despite her experience, it's still less than the living wage of $20.20 an hour.
You can't just bring somebody in and say, here, do that job. So then don't tell me it's unskilled.
Have you ever had someone say that to you, or are you just, reading things? Has anyone actually ever come up to you and said, anyone can do your job, it's easy?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Really?
Glorified cleaner. You're a glorified cleaner. We're here, not just here, UK is the same, you know what I mean? They think, if you want to jack in because you're complaining, you leave, we'll get somebody for your job tomorrow. Yeah, physically you can get somebody for my job tomorrow, yeah. But they wouldn't be as good as me.
Beryl's $19 an hour is more than most. But after more than 2 decades, she still doesn't think she's paid what she's actually worth. Her eyes widened and a little smile appeared when I asked her what difference a small pay rise of a few dollars an hour would mean.
It would mean a new car for me. Seriously, it's 1995 or something, it's dying, bless it. And if it dies, then I'm really stuffed. Because getting to work on the weekends, task in New Zealand.
Elizabeth Knox has 192 residents. Most days, that means a ratio of between 6 to 8 residents per care worker.
Get them up to the toilet, and then from there we start showering them and dress them up.
That's Sa Tavanga. She's 63 in October and has a lot in common with Beryl. 23 years experience in the industry, paid $19 something an hour, loves her job, but unflinchingly doesn't think she's paid what she's worth.
Oh, I need some more pay. I need some more money for because I'm paying the mortgage and I'm helping my family.
And without sounding like a broken record, Alex Nanai, who's 26, feels exactly the same. He used to work in 2 rest homes to make ends meet.
At Cornwall Park and Elizabeth Knox, they're doing 7 to 3 and then starting here 4 to 10. So that was 5 days a week.
So you're working 15 hours a day, 5 days a week?
Yeah, because I had to pay my rent and my son's in private school. Yeah, trying to provide the best education for him. So, and then trying to survive in Auckland.
For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.
Simon Wallace is the Chief Executive of the New Zealand Aged Care Association. Now, the association appealed against the Christine Bartlett and Union Victory in the employment court all the way to the Supreme Court. In doing so, the association claimed it had been told by, and I quote, hundreds of rest homes that they would close if wages went up significantly and funding stayed the same. So what does the association say today? I asked Simon Wallace.
The Aged Care Association is delighted with the announcement of the settlement today. We've lobbied for a number of years at the association for an increase in caregiver wages for the valuable job that they do, the great job that they do in looking after our elderly residents. So we're absolutely delighted with the result today.
Right, no one has told the person who runs your website this, and I don't doubt that you were delighted, but on your website the prognosis is gloomy. You say this is not sustainable. Many homes could go out of business, resulting in job losses and a lack of aged care. You fought against it in the courts. Why the change of mind?
Well, I think 2 years has passed and we've been in a negotiation around the table with unions, with the government and with other providers, and the government took the issue away from the courts to go through a negotiated settlement, and a lot has happened over the last 2 years, and what we've got today is a settlement that we're largely happy with.
So when you say our calculations show the sector would need to find an additional $500 million annually to increase caregiver pay rates to this level, clearly this is not sustainable. And that's what the New Zealand Aged Care Association website says very explicitly. Do you no longer feel that way?
Well, I think we have to analyse the settlement when we see it and go through the details of the settlement. But we need to remember that this is a settlement that's being largely funded by the government, and that has happened through a 2-year negotiation. So we're very, very pleased about that.
Were these people, and they are overwhelmingly, disproportionately likely to be women, were they underpaid?
We've said that for the last 7, 8, 9 years. We've advocated in the association for caregivers to be paid more. There are male caregivers in our rest homes as well. So we've said that for a long time. In a previous election campaign, we talked about caregivers being paid more.
So why were you on the other side of the legal case here? Why, when Tiranova Homes and Care Limited found themselves in court, did you step in behind them?
Well, at that point we had to protect our industry against a possible judgment that could have come down, that could have set a minimum rate of pay that we as providers wouldn't have been able to meet because of the cap funding that we have in our sector. I mean, I think what you need to understand is that the composition of the Aged Care Association amongst our 600 members, it's not for profit, it's welfare, it's religious run organisations, and they work within a capped funding environment of which wages are a significant part. So we needed to defend that case at that point to preempt any judgment that would come down through the courts.
Simon Wallace speaking earlier, 6:17. We're going to return to the McKenzie country. We were there earlier in the report from Kate Gudsall, which is now available online. The conversion of thousands of hectares of the McKenzie Basin to dairy farms has been halted by a decision from the Environment Court. The ruling ends 10 years of legal battles between environmental groups and federated farmers over planning rules proposing extra protections for the iconic tussock lands of the basin. The head of the Environmental Defence Society, Gary Taylor, told Conan Young, our Christchurch-based reporter, it was a turning point for one of the country's most significant pieces of landscape.
Well, this decision really puts in place for the first time robust protection for significant ecological values and landscapes in the McKenzie country. Up to now, we've had a lot of gaps in the in the planning framework, and the result of that has been a lot of land use conversions, predominantly but not exclusively to dairying, with pivot irrigators, and so we've seen a greening of the tussock grasslands of the McKenzie country.
And so a decade ago, the McKenzie District Council came up with something called Plan Change 13 that proposed these protections. And why has it only been decided on now by the Environment Court?
Predominantly because Federated Farmers, the local branch down there, has been extremely litigious. There have been High Court appeals, Environment Court interim decisions, and the whole thing has been strongly contested. And while it's been running, of course, farmers have picked up the pace of land use conversions in the McKenzie, so they've taken advantage of the delay in getting this plan change operative.
And so the decision refers specifically to this exponential growth in the number of consents for irrigation?
Yes, it does.
And what does it say about that?
Well, basically it agrees with our contention at the hearing that the McKenzie Basin has reached a tipping point. There's been a lot more of its natural values lost than most New Zealanders would expect. And it's reached a tipping point where we need some robust intervention to save what's left. Otherwise, that area will just lose its character and turn into another big dairy farm.
The head of the Environmental Defence Society, Gary Taylor, talking to Conan Young. 6:20, the government is making an extra $700,000 available for flood-affected businesses in Edgecombe and the wider Bay of Plenty. The Cabinet today agreed to the package, which would help about 100 local businesses. Our reporter Sarah Robson's just spoken to Whakatane Mayor Tony Bond. She asked him if the package is enough.
When is it enough? Whenever you're in a position, you always want more. Currently, the talks are still carrying on. It's a moving target. Each day we're trying to give figures to central government. We put in a lot of information into government so the Cabinet could look at it today. But as you know, a moving target, even in your own personal situation, if you have a major insurance claim, it's always afterwards that you realise that you haven't claimed for this and that and that.
So I guess, does that mean you're hopeful you might get a bit more out of the government a bit further down the track?
So it depends on the process. We'll have some wins on the way, and obviously but there'll be some losses on the way as well. So remember, we're only just over a week into this disaster, and I think we've made very good progress in the first week, and we look forward to making good progress in the second week.
What sort of issues are businesses, particularly in Edgecombe, facing?
Originally it was just access and getting the business up and running again. Secondly, there will be the temporary housing. If people have to move out for a period, you're taking away some of their customer base. So they are the two issues. Most businesses are now back up and running. It's a bit like Kaikoura, they get up and running, but if you've only got about a quarter of your customer base, it makes it very hard to survive.
Tony Bond talking to Sarah Robson, our reporter, a very short time ago. The Insurance Council is warning quake-damaged homeowners in Marlborough and North Canterbury that banks are cracking down on how they spend their insurance payouts. The message was given at a community meeting last week in the small township of Ward, whose residents are among those in line for cash settlements to handle their own rebuilds and repairs. But a lawyer with expertise in the insurance area says navigating the fine print is tough for many and the need remains for a government-backed advisory service. Here's Tracy Neal with the story.
The Insurance Council's Chief Executive Tim Grafton says it's not a new rule but a long-standing clause in most mortgage contracts.
It's a pretty long-standing convention that if there is a mortgagee with an interest in the settlement, that there tend to be certain trigger levels which the bank would be advised.
He says recent changes to how settlements are paid has highlighted the rule. Private insurers have taken over Kaikoura earthquake claims from the Earthquake Commission, and homeowners are to receive cash payments in order to manage their own repairs. Insurers will be reimbursed by EQC. Mr Grafton says it's unfortunate that it takes a disaster for people to read the fine print of their mortgage contract.
After an earthquake, you suddenly wake up to the fact that you signed a contract with a bank that has a contractual interest in that property and payments on that property.
A Wellington lawyer who was part of an advisory service for quake-affected Christchurch residents says people are going to need help navigating the fine print of insurance claims and settlements. John Goddard says in Christchurch the government made sure everyone had access to free legal advice.
I think people have a real need for free and independent legal advice so that the decisions that they make in the next 6 to 12 months, which are going to have really significant implications, not just for them, but also for their communities, are good business decisions.
The Insurance Council has advised ward residents making sizable claims to get in touch with their bank. It says there were instances in Christchurch where money was used for things other than house repairs. Mr Goddard says it was quite common, but it causes problems down the line.
It left them in an awkward position when they would go to sell their properties because potential purchasers, as part of their due diligence, would ask what was the earthquake damage and how was it repaired. And not everyone was able to answer that question satisfactorily.
Mr Goddard says recovery is often more painful and takes longer in smaller, more isolated communities. For Checkpoint, Tracy Neal.
6:24. Britain's leading mental health charity, Mind, has reported a surge in people contacting them for help after Prince Harry opened up publicly about the death of his mum. The Prince was 12 years old when Princess Diana died in a car crash in Paris in 1997. In an interview with the Daily Telegraph, he admitted going to counselling in his late 20s, saying he'd completely shut down his emotions for years. CNN's Nina Dos Santos has more from London.
Prince Harry on a trip to Jamaica in 2012. All smiles and dance. But these were far from fun times for Britain's seemingly carefree young royal, who revealed to the Daily Telegraph newspaper that he sought counselling 4 years ago after coming close to a breakdown.
I was a typical sort of 20, 25, 28-year-old running around going, life is great, or life is fine. And then started to have a few conversations, and actually, all of a sudden, all of this grief that I'd never processed started to come to the forefront. I was like, there's actually a lot of stuff here I need to deal with.
The second son of Prince Charles and Diana, Princess of Wales, Harry was only 12 when his mother was killed in a car crash in Paris, sending the nation into immediate mourning. But the young prince, who still lives at Kensington Palace, her former home, says that he was unable to process his feelings of grief until his 20s, leading to 2 years of total chaos, a period which left a profound impact on both his personal and professional life.
My way of dealing with it was, sticking my head in the sand, refusing to ever think about my mum, because why would that help? It's only going to make you sad, it's not going to bring her back.
For the journalist who interviewed him, herself a mental health campaigner, it was unusual to hear a royal talk for half an hour on any subject, let alone one who's been wary of the media in the past.
I thought possibly, he might say a few things kind of obliquely. And then we arrived at Kensington Palace, and it was me and him in a room with a cup of tea, and he just sort of spouted forth, and it was quite extraordinary. It's quite extraordinary to hear a royal talk for such a long time.
This isn't the first time Prince Harry, fifth in line to the throne, has smashed stigmas. A former soldier, he's walked to the South Pole with wounded army veterans to highlight their plight.
Another 11 kilometres to go.
And launched the Invictus Games for amputees. In choosing to reveal his battle with his own emotions, Harry is highlighting a cause also close to the heart of his brother, Prince William, who he credits with his decision to seek help.
You really need to deal with this. It's not normal to think that nothing's affected you.
Prince Harry says that he's now better, but his very public admission of therapy to deal with his mother's death will leave many profoundly moved as the nation this summer prepares to mark the 20th anniversary of her passing.
That report came in a short time ago. We are coming up to 28 minutes past 6. Lots of feedback tonight, particularly about the Christine Bartlett interview. Of course, the government's announcement today of $2 billion pay equity settlement for 55,000 healthcare workers over 5 years, taking, if you are on the minimum wage, which is currently $15.75 an hour, up to at least $19 per hour, depending on qualifications and experience. But that is the minimum raise those people will achieve. Begun by Christine Bartlett in Bartlett versus Terra Nova, her employer, back in 2012. It was the Service and Food Workers Union, of course. So many people writing in about that. Hi, John. Very happy to see the increase for caregivers. I know what a wonderful job these people do. I'm looking forward to nurses' wages being addressed now. I have been a nurse for 30 years and I'm earning $30 per hour. That's a good rate, I agree, but the gap between doctors and nurses has become cavernous. We work damn hard. It's time. Let's remember the Nationals had over 8 years to agree to increase disability and aged care support workers' pay. How cynical, says Gemma. The Nationals waited until 5 months before the election to finally agree to do the minimally decent thing. Brace for National to cynically thieve Labour's policies over the next few months. The fact that National is now scrambling around belatedly doing what is right and stealing opponents' policies shows that National is desperate and knows their policies hitherto are morally repugnant and off-putting to most voters. Here's hoping New Zealanders are intelligent enough to see through this BS, says Gemma. Lots of feedback tonight. We really appreciate hearing from you. Checkpoint begins every night at 5 o'clock. We are on Face TV, Sky Channel 83, we're on Freeview Channel 50, we're on the RNZ website, and of course we are on Radio New Zealand, RNZ, as we have been, believe it or not, for 50 years. However you join us, thank you for doing so. If you want to hear anything that you missed tonight in the Christine Bartlett interview that we played after 5 o'clock, was fantastic. It is available online. On behalf of our excellent and very hard-working little team, thank you for being with us. We'll be back tomorrow at 5.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The government has agreed a $2 billion pay equity settlement for care and support workers, giving the mostly female workforce a pay rise of up to 49% over 5 years. The Environment Court says dairy conversions in the McKenzie Basin should stop, and it recommends a moratorium on tenure review, which allows farmers to buy leasehold land. The government is providing an extra $700,000 for disaster relief in flood-hit Edgecombe and the wider Bay of Plenty. And vegetable prices have surged in supermarkets across the country after crops were destroyed by heavy rain and flooding over the past 2 months. Our next news and weather is at 7.
On the new album by Americana combo Hooray for the Riff Raff, singer-songwriter Alinda Lee Segarra looks to her Puerto Rican heritage. I'm Nick Bollinger and I'll be reviewing Hooray for the Riff Raff's The Navigator and The Sampler.